Okay, as promised in the last segment, we're in my directory. My prompt for my computer is Ira's air, : and the local directory that I'm running in is called cprogram/week1. So here's where I developed some of the code that was being used in week 1 of this class. So let's look at that directory. The way we can see that directory, again, we're in terminal for a Macintosh, the terminal window, which is basically running Unix. So I can use Unix commands. The Unix command ls shows me the files in that directory. So we see there's an a.out file, there's something called add2.exe, and then there are these .c files, which are source files, which are code, and then we can see something like miles.exe, circle.exe, add2.exe. So all of that are what I previously compiled into an executable, and I can, of course, execute them. Let's look at add2.exe. So in order to execute them, all I have to do is say add2.exe. It says input 2 floats. I do that, and I'm done. So 4.3 and 6.8 is 11.1. Now, if I want to develop a program, let's say I want to change the input 2 floats program to an input 3 floats. Let me try doing that. So I'm going to have add3. I'm going to call it add3.c. vi add3.c. So this command means create a file called add3.c. Now, it's going to look very much like add2.c. So basically, and frequently the case is, I'm going to want to modify a pre-existing file. So I'll just read that file in. And these are all VI commands. And again, in this class, I'm not going to go through all of the VI commands or notepad commands. You're just going to have to get comfortable with using an editor. An editor is a critical tool for almost anything on a computer. And once you understand a little of it, you can get a tutorial that explains in detail the editing commands you need. So, okay. I mistitled that file, so I couldn't read it. There it is, read in 2 floats. So here's a classic kind of thing. Let's change it to 3. So that was a CW that I printed, and that means change word. And I'm going to change the word to 3. Okay, today is not the 18th, it's the 19th, so I'll change that. Again, I might have a sample program of some kind, and I'm just always going to probably include standard I/O. And so I don't have to always be redoing my program. I have something standard. Now, indeed, if you go to an environment in Windows with something like an IDE, more elaborate IDE, like Visual Studios, it'll probably give you a basic template for starting such a program. So an integrated development environment like Visual Studios, once you get the hang of it, though, it's got so much stuff in it that can be intimidating. Does give you a leg up on doing programs. It gives you a lot of additional assistance. So instead of float AB, we need a third. I'm going to just do an addition here. So I'm going to also have a C, comma. Okay. So little a says add at this place. It's a way to do an insert. And here I'm going to say input 3 floats. And I'm going to make an error here because I want to show you the whole cycle. So let's make an error. Instead of, I'll hit the wrong quote sign. So many places in a C program, we have to have matching braces, parentheses, all sorts of things have to match. Here I'm going to get a third float. I'm going to print the third float. I'm going to do an insert. That's another way to add immediately. So that'll be C equals %F. Oh, and here I'm going to also make a mistake. I'm not going to put C in. So it's expecting 3 values, but it's only going to display 2 values. What's going to happen there? Again, we're going to see how the compile edit cycle works. All right, so I'm done now, and I'm done, and I can exit, and I can do a colon, right? I can do a colon quit, and I can try to compile now. So I'm ready for the next phase, which is to call the compiler. I'm going to use this .o to say that I want that to be add3.exe if it works, and add3.c is my file to compile. Whoops, warning, missing terminal quote, invalid. And it even shows it. This is not being matched. So that's pretty good. And then it says error, makes a number of other errors because there's confusion about matching. So let me re-enter that editor. I used a shortcut. I just said exclamation mark V, which means use the previous editor command. Let's go and correct this error. I pointed it and even told me what line it was on. So I'm going to try and redo this, and I'm going to go ahead and also okay, 1 warning and 2 errors generated. It said a warning. There was more conversions than arguments. That's not a syntax error in itself. It's something where the compiler's intelligent enough to show that something did not make sense. But the warning didn't allow me, I believe, to still go ahead and build an executable. And this says input 3 floats. 3, 4.5, 6.6. And look what happened here. I got 3, 4.5, but C was shown as 0, but the right result happened, 6.6, and we ended up with a sum of 14.1. So if we had fixed the program based on that warning, and I'm going to go back and do that, we wouldn't have get that funky c equals 0, because c equals 0 was the initialized value of this float, but it wasn't changed by the scanf, because it was changed by the scanf, but it didn't show up in the printf, because here it said %f and there was nothing to read out of. So here we're going to now correct that. Okay, I think I corrected it. Let me recompile. Okay, no warnings, no errors, everything looks okay. Let's try the add 3 again. Input 3 floats, 1.1, 2.2, 3.3. That should be, what, 6.6, I hope. Sure enough, done. So we've seen how we get syntax errors, how the compile cycle works, how we run, recompile, make our fixes, and finally get working executable. And indeed, if we go and look in the directory, there is add3.exe and our program. Okay, so this is my working environment. It may not be yours. You might have a different kind of Unix. This is under the Macintosh, but mostly Unix environments will look like this, or you might have a totally different environment for Windows, and you'll have to use a different editor and probably a different compiler, or you can import a GNU compiler within Windows and use a Windows terminal box as well, if you want to approximate this environment. Or you can again go and use Visual Studios and use one of its simpler project modes to get you here.